Good morning and welcome back to another video. We're just gonna stay cozy today, so wherever you are, you can grab your snack, get cozy with me, go on your hot girl walk, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, just make sure you're locked in because we're gonna be chatting about all things hormone health. I don't think I have a single long form video out there right now where I go into detail about my diagnosis, my transformation, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and just how I've been able to maintain my progress naturally for over 6 years now. So we're gonna be talking about that whole process. And then you guys also sent in some amazing questions on Instagram that I'm gonna go through as well. And then in addition to that, I just feel like this is the perfect time to have this conversation because PCOS, which is what I was diagnosed with in my early 20s, polycystic ovarian syndrome, was just renamed to PMOS, which stands for polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. And the reason I'm so excited about this and the reason I think it's such a big deal is because the old title puts so much emphasis on having cysts, which you don't even have to have cysts on your ovaries to be diagnosed with PCOS. I just think that's such a big misconception, and it's one of the reasons so many women were confused or just felt dismissed or went undiagnosed. And now the new title really encompasses more of what's happening in the body when it comes to our insulin, our metabolism, and just so many other ways that it affects your health. And overall, I just feel like this is going to open the door to, a lot more education, a lot more research, and just help a lot more women be able to advocate for themselves and better understand what's going on in their body. So very, very excited about that. That's why I felt like this was the perfect time to have this chat. But like I said, you guys sent in so many amazing questions, so I'm just gonna pop them up right here and we're gonna talk all about my diagnosis, where I went wrong, what I would change, and just make sure that I answer all of your questions. I do want to quickly say I get questions a lot about GLP-1s, peptides, other forms of medication, whether it be birth control, metformin. I decided to heal naturally. And I feel like sometimes when you see before and after photos, which I'm going to be showing and just like talking about, a transformation, it's so misleading when people aren't clear about what it took to see the change or feel the change. So I did all of this naturally. No GLP-1, no Ozempic, no medication. I did take natural supplements, which I'll share, but there's nothing against going that route. Personally, I just wanted to do it naturally. I didn't want to rely on any type of band-aid solution, and it's been the thing that I feel like has just helped me, really maintain my progress and feel good, in my body. The biggest thing is just to make sure that you're making an educated decision for your body, and that looks different for everyone. But I just wanted to quickly say that because I know those things can get a little confusing when you're seeing like before and afters and people aren't transparent about what it took. So it did take me a little bit longer. It always does when you're doing things naturally. So I just wanted to put that out there. But the first question was, what were your symptoms? So the first red flag was just that I had lost my period. It almost took me like 3 months to realize that I wasn't having a cycle. At this time I was living in LA and my schedule was crazy and busy, and I was like, oh my gosh, when was the last time I had a period? So that was the first red flag. I also experienced rapid weight gain. I had gained 30 pounds over the span of 3 months without any major shifts in my nutrition. So I was like, okay, what's happening? Acne, hair loss, fatigue, chronic bloating. I was bloating after every single thing that I ate and was in extreme discomfort from that. Like it felt like I had bricks in my stomach at all times, and then just a lot of swelling and inflammation, and I did not feel good in my body. It also started to affect my mental health and my mood. So those were a few of the symptoms. If you're experiencing those things, not part of womanhood, not normal, those are things that like I was told. So that's definitely a reason to book an appointment with a functional medicine doctor and look into your symptoms to figure out why you may be also experiencing those things. I told myself that I was going to answer these rapid fire, but then I just get so into it. So we're just going to kind of take our time going through these. But the next one is there a diet you recommend to start with for healing PCOS? Hormones, what diet works best for it? Everyone is different, especially when it comes to your food sensitivities. So my first recommendation would just be to get a food sensitivity test or get your lab testing done. I took an MRT test and then removed my sensitivities because sometimes if you're dealing with some type of like gut dysbiosis, there's healthy foods that can be causing, inflammation or just like poor digestion. So removing those was number one. And then I also removed gluten and dairy. I cut back on refined sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. I know that kind of seems like a lot, but once I started just like having fun with my recipes and having fun with, figuring out how to make these things taste appealing, it was a lot easier to stay consistent. So I have an ebook that I can put right here and link in the description that's all hormone friendly, gluten and dairy free and refined sugar free recipes, but just prioritizing that. Another thing that I just thought about too, it was like a mistake that I made early on, was I would, like, anytime I was in the grocery store and I saw like a gluten or dairy free just like processed snack, like let's say it's like a granola bar or a bag of chips or whatever it was, I would get so excited when it said like gluten and dairy free that I automatically would just like buy it and thought that it meant like, okay, this is healthy for me. But a lot of those snacks do have ingredients that can cause, you know, like poor digestion, or they're just not like the best, you know, ingredients. So I would say look out for that and try to focus more on whole foods. If you're gonna snack, I think having like a parfait or a meat stick and keeping it like really simple is better than buying all of these like processed gluten and dairy free snacks that really aren't that healthy for you. So that's another rec. And then also, oddly enough, there were some healthy things that I feel like caused bloat and poor digestion, like eating too many raw cruciferous vegetables at the beginning of my journey always caused discomfort. Too many fermented foods, and then also too many like prebiotic sodas or just carbonated beverages in general. Like sticking to tea and water, I think is best for, you know, digestion, especially if you're somebody that's dealing with like chronic bloat. You just don't want to add carbonation to that problem. So those are a few of my recs. Next question is, how do you deal with the insulin resistance, weight loss, and dealing with hair loss? For insulin resistance, one of the things that made the biggest difference for me was prioritizing blood sugar balancing meals. This means making sure that your meals have a good source of protein, fiber, and fat. So when you go to make your meal, you think, okay, what's my protein source gonna be? And if you have followed me for a minute, you've seen this meal so many times. Ground beef, a good source of fiber, sweet potato, and then you've got your healthy fat, which is like avocado. So just pick those favorite foods or your favorite meals, and then you can rotate what each source of protein, fiber, fat is going to be. Add your sauce, and then you're good to go. And that's pretty much how I build all of my meals. You're gonna see me pairing fruit with meat a lot, and then I 9 times out of 10 have like a sweet potato in my meal. You can also do like quinoa, or just focus on having grains with like a low glycemic index. So those are the things that made the biggest difference for my insulin resistance. And then for hair loss, my hair was kind of like the last thing that I focused on. I'll put a photo right here if I can find it, but my ends were like so brittle and so dry, and I was losing a lot of hair. I feel like prioritizing protein really helped thicken up my hair, and then later on I ended up taking Nutrafol, which also helped. But overall, stress, sleep, and fixing my diet is what helped thicken up my hair and just helped me lose less hair when I was like brushing and showering. What kind of foods did you eat when you were doing the do not feed diet for gut health? So I think for this you're referring to candida overgrowth. So I had candida overgrowth and leaky gut, and candida is a yeast that like naturally occurs in the body, but when there is like an overgrowth of it, that's when it kind of can become an issue. So when I was healing my gut, I had to kill off my candida and then also just fix my leaky gut. For that, I did take a few supplements. So I took liquid biocidin and candibactin AR and BR. I can put them right here, link them in the description. These were recommended to me by my integrated medicine doctor, so I do not recommend going to get these until you have chatted with your doctor. But these helped a lot with just killing off candida. And then again, when it comes to nutrition, you shouldn't be eating things that are feeding your candida or causing your candida to grow. So this meant removing, you know, like yeast, alcohol, sugar, all of those things that, you know, like candida will grow on. But gut health is one of those tricky things. I feel like it's such a big umbrella term, and I see so many videos about it. It's like, oh, I have poor gut health. And it's like, how do you know what you're fixing if you don't really know what's happening? So, you know, if you have leaky gut, there's also things that are helpful, like drinking bone broth that's rich in proline and glycine. That's slowly going to help repair the gut lining. Things like L-glutamine powder. Like there's so many supplements that can help with that, and ways you can change your nutrition to help with that. But if you're just scrolling and kind of self-diagnosing and you don't know what the real issue is, it's kind of hard to feel any type of relief or make any headway. So just make sure that you're getting, it can be a stool test, or, you know, depending on what your symptoms are. I got a stool test. You can also do different types of blood tests to see what's going on in your gut. Okay, tips to help with bloat. I exercise and walk, do yoga, and eat enough fiber. This is so relatable. I feel like I could like hear your tone when you were writing this, because it's like, dang, I am doing everything. How on earth am I still bloated? And let me just say, like, I can 100% relate to this. It's normal to feel bloated after you have like a big meal, but it's not normal to feel bloated from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, and it's like getting progressively worse throughout the day, and it feels like you have like bricks in your stomach. That's how I felt. I would touch my stomach and it felt so hard and it was so uncomfortable, and there wasn't anything I could do. Like, you know, you're like doing all the right habits and you're like, why am I still feeling this way? So my top recommendation is to go get your testing done with an integrative medicine doctor. You're going to hear me say this so many times, but it's so common to like feel like you have something going on, and then you stress out about it and you're like, what should I do, or what do I need to change? And you try to make these changes without knowing like what the cause is. So figuring out what might be going on with your gut health. If you have some type of like gut dysbiosis, it could be candida overgrowth, leaky gut, whatever it may be, you need to figure out what that root cause is, so then you know what to change, and then you're not just like throwing things at the wall and then, you know, getting more bloated as time goes on. If I were to create a list of things, like sometimes, you know, I'll have an off week where I'm just like feeling a little bit more bloated than normal. And in the past, I had no idea what to do, but now I feel like I'm like, okay, if I feel it coming on, here's my list. So number one, I'm hydrating with water only. It's so fun to have a little carbonated beverage. I love those, but when I'm feeling bloated, it's just strictly water and tea. Number two, warm, nourishing meals. I'm not having a lot of raw veggies or any type of like large salad that's gonna just cause like indigestion. For some reason, salads really tend to like irritate, you know, my stomach. And then I'm not doing any processed snacks. I'm not reaching for protein bars or having that much protein powder. Don't get me wrong, I love all these things, but if I'm feeling really bloated, these are the guidelines that I'm typically sticking to feel better. And then, you know, we'll add these things back in like the next week. Reducing caffeine. I am getting in the sauna. I'm doing my legs up the wall. I'll do a lymphatic stomach massage, and then just taking my time, chewing my meals, being present with my food, and just working through my meals a little bit more slowly than usual. So those are the little habits that if I'm going through just like a phase where I feel a little bit more bloated than normal, that I'm like, all right, we're locking in, this is what I'm doing, and then I'll feel better within 2 to 3 days. Next question is, am I going to have belly fat forever because of my PMOS? It's impossible to get rid of. Why is it harder to lose fat with PCOS? What are your tips? So one of the things that was kind of making me hold on to a little bit more fat or just store fat differently was just struggling with insulin resistance. So a way to fix that was prioritizing blood sugar balancing meals, just having a deeper understanding also of how PCOS was changing my hormones. It was changing like my hunger cues and my cravings. So yeah, I think understanding the role that your blood sugar plays on that is probably the most important. And then, you know, if you want to work with a dietitian to make sure that you, like if your goal is weight loss, you want to be, you know, in a deficit, but still make sure you're getting proper nutrients and hitting your protein goals. But there's nothing worse than feeling like you're eating healthy and you're exercising and you just have, you know, whether it be just like that stubborn fat around your midsection that you can't get rid of, but PMOS, it does change the way that your body stores fat. So the biggest solution for me was blood sugar balancing meals, more low impact workouts like just walking, hot yoga, and trying to regulate my cortisol to making sure that I was having that natural rise in the morning and then the natural like dip before bed. A lot of people think that like cortisol should be low all the time. We want to suppress cortisol, but you want it to be naturally elevated in the morning. So managing stress, sleep, like it all kind of has a role in weight loss and how your body responds to that. Next question. How long did it take you to get to your weight goal? How soon did you notice the weight falling off? This was a mindset shift that I kind of had to make early on because I was so fixated in the beginning on my weight gain, which is only natural. But there's so many ways to measure progress with your hormone health aside from the number that you see on the scale. You can ask yourself, you know, like, is my skin more glowy? Am I getting better sleep? Do I feel less stressed? Is my hair getting thicker? Is my cycle more regulated? So my first recommendation is to also focus on those things. But it's only natural to, you know, want to see an improvement there if that's your goal. It took me a while because for a whole year I was just, I feel like making a lot of mistakes and kind of doing the wrong things. So I didn't really see an improvement there. But after I worked with with my integrative medicine doctor and I started implementing the right habits, I started to see it fall off within, like 3 to 6 months. And so I lost 30 pounds, and then I've been able to maintain that for over 6 years, which I think is the biggest thing, because a lot of times you'll see people make these drastic changes and then it's things that you can't maintain and then you fluctuate, and that's not a good feeling. So my biggest piece of advice is to take your time, make these changes with intention, and make sure they're ones that you can actually just stay consistent with over time, because now I don't really feel like I have this like rigid routine or I have too much restriction. Like I've been able to maintain it within reason of still enjoying my meals and doing fun exercises and not feeling like everything has to be so rigid. But yeah, it took a little bit longer just because I made mistakes and chose to do it naturally. Were you ever on birth control for your PCOS? Have you ever used metformin or a GLP-1 peptide to help with PCOS? I know I briefly touched on this, but I have not been on birth control for over a decade now. I can't believe it's been that long. I've never taken a GLP-1 or peptides. I was recommended metformin, almost took it, and then my mom was kind of freaking out and she was like, I just don't think you should do this. So we started looking into it, and then I decided not to take metformin either. I don't think there's anything wrong with choosing to go that route. It was just a personal decision not to. And I think the main thing here is just being very educated on what it is you're about to consume, put into your body, and then you get to make that decision on what's gonna be best for you. But you just wanna make sure you can advocate for yourself, ask the right questions, and that you're talking to a doctor or a healthcare provider that's going to answer all the questions that you have, so you're fully educated on the way these things could, impact your health and your body. But having been on birth control for a decade, I took it, I want to say like at the end of high school, beginning of college. My body did not respond well to it. So that was one of the things when I was going into these doctor's appointments, I was like, hey, birth control is just a no-go for me. Can we please think about other solutions? And for some reason, most of them were making me feel like the only way I was going to be able to fix these symptoms was through birth control. So I'm happy that I just kind of like stuck to my guns and was like, we're not doing that. Okay, next question. What are some good cycle regulating tips? Cycle syncing is one of those things that can be a little complicated when you're first getting into it. So to educate yourself, I would get the book In the Flow by Alyssa Beatty. I also had her on my podcast. I can put the 2 podcast episodes right here and then link them in the description. But you just want to understand what each phase of your cycle looks like, what's happening to your hormones, and then you can, change your nutrition and your workouts based around that. For me, I mainly am focusing on luteal phase habits. And then for workouts, the easiest way to approach it is, and this is just what works best for my body, menstrual phase, I'm focusing on the most low impact workouts. I'll do a little bit of strength training, but no running, no HIIT, low impact. Follicular and ovulatory is where you can kind of pick up the tempo, and if you want to do a HIIT workout, you want to go on a run, that's like the time frame that I will do that. And then beginning of luteal phase, I'll still kind of like push it a little bit, but end of luteal phase and menstrual phase, low impact, very chill, a little bit of strength training, but like I'm not pushing the limits. But yeah, if you want to just really understand each phase, please get Alyssa Beatty's In the Flow. What's your go-to workout for when you're on your period? We kind of just touched on this, but walking and strength training, no running, no HIIT. We're relaxing. But some women do have more energy during their cycle. So if that's you and that's what you want to do, by all means go for it. But I'm keeping things pretty low-key. Okay, moving on to periods. Can you share what your periods are like these days? How did you reverse painful periods? So when I think about my period evolution, I went from having no period at all to then when I got my first period back, I was just so excited. I didn't care how much pain I was in. I was just excited that I was having one. I called my mom and I was like, period party, she's here, she's back. And you know what's crazy? I thought, okay, once I get this first period back, there's no way I'm gonna get one. The following month it'll be, all dysregulated. I have had a period ever since that first period that I got back. They were very painful and very heavy for a while, but like I said, I was just excited that I was having them. And the other thing that was different is I was having longer cycles, so it was like a 32 to 34 day cycle, and implementing the right luteal phase habits is one of the things that really helped with the pain. So drinking red raspberry leaf tea, cutting back on caffeine, alcohol, eating foods rich in iron, omega-3, and magnesium, and just understanding cycle syncing in my body completely shifted the way that I started to feel like before I started and then on my period. That's why I think just like understanding the way your hormones fluctuate is so important. So again, Alyssa Vitti is such a great resource for this. Highly recommend looking into like her habits and implementing those. But my periods now are night and day, and I could not be more grateful for it because I was just completely useless on day one, and now I'm like, okay, it might get me down for like, 20-30 minutes, but then I'm ready to go. Did you have any issues with mental health, anxiety due to hormonal imbalances? Yes, and I feel like this is something that I should talk more about, but there were kind of two layers to it. And the first one was feeling dismissed and feeling like all of these changes that I was making that first year was just like the trial and error, nothing was working. My symptoms were actually getting worse. And then, I just felt really isolated because at the time, nobody was talking about PCOS on social media. And anytime I heard the word like hormone health, it was always in relation to, menopause. And so there really wasn't anybody my age that was going through it or sharing their experience. So that kind of started to take a toll because I was like, is this going to be something that I'm dealing with for the rest of my life? And then you have the other layer of it, which is like the hormones that are actually impacted by PMOS. Things like your progesterone, your androgens, your cortisol, estrogen, insulin. These are all things that are going to impact the way you feel and can create, feelings of anxiety. So over time, all the changes that I made, and this is all encompassing nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, really focusing on nervous system regulation. Like when it came to anxiety, I would feel it first like in my chest, I would get super tight, didn't do well in social situations, overstimulated easily. And so I really had to make an effort to work on those things. But yes, this is something that I really struggle with. And if this is something you want me to go into detail about, I'm happy to do like a whole video, on mental health. But the main thing to know is that it's not in your head. The hormones that are affected by PMOS really have an impact on your mental health. It can totally shift, the way that you feel. So just keep that in mind. And then we had a lot of questions about supplements and which ones I took and which ones were the most effective. This is where it can get really confusing because there's so many different supplements out there. You scroll and you see people recommending like 20 different things and it's like, what the heck am I supposed to take? This is why getting your testing done is so important, so you're not just buying things without knowing, like what you're deficient in or what you need. And sometimes overdoing it on supplements can make you feel worse. So you need to make sure that you have data based off of your body before you just go and buy random things. But here's what I was taking. Myo and D-chiro-inositol, magnesium, which I'm still taking every night, omega-3 fish oil, which I still take every day, Candibactin AR and BR for my candida overgrowth. I'm not currently taking that. Liquid biocidin, L-glutamine powder, and MCT oil. I might be forgetting a few little things, but those are the main ones that I took for my hormone health and for my gut health. Okay, there's so many questions that we didn't get to, so if you enjoyed this, just let me know and we can always do part 2. But for now, we're just gonna end with this one right here. Would love to know what a non-negotiable is for you to avoid with your diagnosis. It's hard to pick just one thing because I feel like there's a few things I know if I'm not consuming, I'm gonna feel so much better. The first one is alcohol. If you're in the thick of healing, alcohol is of no benefit to you. So limiting that as much as possible is going to be for the best. Number 2 would probably be sugar. When I am not eating sugar, my skin's tighter, I have better digestion, I'm sleeping better, I have a more stable mood, and like everything is better when I'm not consuming sugar. So, opting for things sweetened with like maple syrup, coconut sugar, honey, just eating fruit. And then if you're making desserts at home, like you can actually make them really tasty by just naturally sweetening them. So making that swap. And then avoiding stress as much as possible, which that's not always in our control. So sometimes that's not doable. And then avoiding bad sleep. Those are a few of my non-negotiables that if I can stay on track with those, I know I'm going to feel so much better. And I just have a few final thoughts before we go because I honestly got emotional just like going through your questions. It just brought me back to, like the beginning of my journey and how I felt. And it's such a hard feeling to explain to people who aren't going through it, but when you don't feel at home in your own body or just aligned with your body as a woman, it's something that weighs on you daily and like that starts to stack up and affect so many other parts of your life. So I see you and I'm here for you, and please just let me know. Like, I don't know, going through your questions and even just filming this video with you made me want to speak about this a lot more. So please let me know what you want to see, what you would like me to go into more detail about. And yeah, I just want to, help you in any way. And then the other advice I have is just to be patient with yourself, especially if you're healing naturally. It's just something that takes a little bit more time, and I promise you, when you're consistent with these changes, you will start to feel and see a difference if you're focusing on the right things. So that's why my goal is, I know it can be so boring. You're like, Gracie, we've heard you say blood sugar balancing meals, hitting your protein goals, managing your stress so many times. I only want to share the things that work, like all of these fast trends, all of these, temporary quick solutions. You're probably not going to hear me talk about them very much or be like, hey, now you should try this, now you should try that. Like, I'm going to be talking about the same things because these are the things that work, and these are the things that have helped me maintain my progress for such a long time without having any type of relapse or having all these symptoms pop back up. So yeah, and I always just want this to be a space where you guys feel like, just take what you want, like from the videos. Like the habits that work for me may not always necessarily work for you, but maybe you try one or two things and you're like, oh my gosh, like this made me feel so much better. So that's always my goal as I share all of these things with you. But thank you for watching. I hope you like this conversation and just like a little sit down Q&A and chit chat, and I will see you soon. Mwah.